listen to podcast. And this is symbolizing it. It's a small microphone when I plug in into my iPhone 6s Plus when I'm recording a solo show for my podcast, and also when I'm having interview and using a long distance service recording. So this is iRig Mic Cast by IK Multimedia. So I'll start out here, taking soon a sip of tea and see here if it's how it's going with the live streaming on Facebook. It's working. And that's from a throwback or follow-up from the latest here recordings. Pete Bittner from Hubs said hi and stopped by, and I will talk about that. Cheers. My unicorn mug that turns into different color here when it's hot beverage, and it's Assam black tea from India. So yeah, the throwback. I were wearing this one. It's like a multifunctional headgear that you use in order to protect yourself from wind, from dust, from whatever. It's good in warm weather and cold weather. And here it's word saying thin blue line, where you have a blue line. I was wearing this up to my eyes in order to support the police force and the work that we are doing and defending our individual rights. And I will come back to that on Thursday when I'm doing a force hammer, ventilating what's going on in the world, and then I will take the latest issue of The Economist, and I will probably comment on Cuba here. Cuba revolts against the revolution, the communists' dictatorship there, and now we could see freedom is coming along, hopefully soon, for the Cubans living there. And also they have a great support from the expats living in, for example, Miami, Florida. So that's on Thursday at 9 a.m. Central European Time. And thanks, one viewer, for watching this. To take another sip here of my mug of tea. Cheers. So, three things tech. And I wrote in the subject title the line there, automatic with 2T. And I was wondering how could he spell that like that? But the founder of WordPress and this, you could say, like foundation or the organization that, how do you say, keeping WordPress the open source thing for bloggers in place in a way, and that's called Automatic, and they also have bought several companies, for example, on services like Tumblr, that is a blogger tool, a simple blogger tool, and now they have acquired Pocket Casts, and Automatic is with 2T as Matt, his name. His site is ma.tt, I think, his blog there. So Automatically acquired Pocket Casts, and that's a pod catcher. That's an app in order to listen to podcasts, to subscribe to podcasts. And you have all kind of different podcast apps or catchers that takes the aggregation from the RSS feed that you subscribe to. So I could ask you, what's your favorite podcaster app or podcatcher? And for me, as an Apple fanboy, I'm using often Apple Podcaster app, the purple icon there with I see it as an individual and an I, and then you have this signal that you'll listen to a podcast. That's standard default on your iPhone. So it's easier for iPhone users than Android users to find podcasts and start out with podcasting because you have one already on your phone. Back in the day when they started, it was not the best app, and maybe it's still not that, but it develops over time. Now, for example, they are getting into the game of subscription and how you could earn money on your podcast. But again, I say it's often for a few, a small percentage that have a critical mass and subscribers. But it's interesting to see how this is developing, that you could have your own private feed that you pay for as a listener. So now I should say follow Ego Netcast and not subscribe, because if you subscribe in the future you could pay for it. So it's this mix up with words. So that's one app. And the second most popular app, I think, is Spotify, that have gone like a rocket like that. It's, I think, 10% they have of the market shares at least, and that's due to the thing it's very popular by music listeners and by Android users. And when Spotify started, it was mainly focused on music listening. So, for example, they didn't have features and functions like quicker speed, or like you could have on up to 2-point speed, for example. If I talk pretty slowly, you want maybe to speed up that and then still listen to the podcast, but do it in a quicker way. Then you could speed up that, and also other functions like that, boosting your volume and so on. They didn't have that at the beginning, because that you don't listen to music like that way. You listen to it in a regular way. My favorite by podcast apps is, of course, my standalone apps myself for my podcast out there. So, for example, the Sector of Foxhole and the EgoNetcast. So it's Overcast, and there we could talk about this business model as a new media advisor. I'm all for paying for good service and support the developer and programmers so they could develop the service instead of only buying it at once, because then the developer and the programmer and the app company has to find new customers the whole time in order to continue their business. Cheers. So Overcast started out with, I think, like a premium features and a subscription service. So, and then they got now, so it's one time that you buy it. So I bought the premium feature, and then you could also use service. But he works with it like you could have ads also, relevant ads, and subscribe to that kind of thing. And also you have a neat feature that you could listen to a file, an MP3 file, how it will sound for the podcast listener. So if you have done the editing and post-production and then you want to listen, how will this sound for the listener? So as a host and a producer podcast, you could use Overcast and upload that in the app. So that's, I like that app, Overcast. And then other favorite that have been is Himalaya, that I learned from Zachary Davis, Lyceum.fm, and also vice president, I think, for premium content there at Himalaya. So that's one. And then you have maybe a dozen or even more of other podcasts out there, but the biggest one are Apple Podcaster, and then Spotify, and then probably Google Podcasts will come when they get their so-called act together, that it will be a default app on Android phones. So you Android users out there, please tell me what you like about the Google Podcast app. I think they have some neat features. So that's one. And now coming to two viewers here, thanks. Pocket Cast. I know that have been a favorite for both Apple users, iPhone users, and Android users. And they had a subscription model there in order to support the development there. And then they got acquired by NPR, the public radio station. I think BBC was involved with that, because I think they saw the opportunity how they could integrate that in their mainstream media outlet and activities. But now I've sold it to WordPress. They don't say how much they bought it for and the immediate plans, but they say that the people behind Overcast has said that Pocket Casts will continue to be there. So now I see how you could integrate that with, for example, WordPress.com and with your blogging of choice. So that could be a strong thing to ramp up the usage of Pocket Cast. So if all the podcast bloggers were out there starting blogging on WordPress.com and they're starting using Pocket Cast, they will see a tremendous influx of usage. And I think still Pocket Cast is on the top 10 list there. And they have favorable reviews and the design and the user experience and so on. Again, it's the business model, how they continue with that. Another one that I so-called can't use to joke due to the fact about what's going on in Cuba is Castro. That's also Pocket using for a podcast, but it's called Castro. And I asked them, why have you called it Castro? Of course, Castro could maybe it's common names. It doesn't have to be the dictator in Cuba, but and it's Castro, so it could be played with words. So that's another podcast app out there. So it will be interesting again to see how it play around. And WordPress, for example, they had a cooperation with Acast, but if you have a blog, it transcribed into a podcast. So all these new things, what you could do with a podcast is interesting. So that's the news, and I got this news on through Facebook here from my friend Eileen Smith that said, "Great news! Pocket Cast acquired by Automatic WordPress." So that's interesting news, and it'll be interesting to follow around. And I could now I see I've been talking for 13 minutes here, and I could ramble a bit, but I want to have this short and sweet. But I have some personal things that I want to share with the future of my podcasting with, for example, Ego Netcast, the podcast host that I'm using, because you should have your audio file, the recording of the file, the episodes on a host, and that you should pay for also. There are free hosts out there also, and I'm testing that as a new media advisor to see. For example, Anchor is a free one. It's owned by Spotify, and then you could wonder what their agenda is and how they use the data and the information and read the terms of service. But as I said, I'm for the free market, and it will play out how it will work. So that's why I talked about RSS feed, rich site summary, and in the past here, and how Anchor now, they don't really have an RSS feed anymore. So you get into their system, but still they have to have some kind of service or in the background in order to subscribe to it. So it will be also interesting, because again, as I said, the listeners don't really care how they subscribe, they listen. They want it to be easy. And now with Pocket Cast and WordPress, that could maybe turn out to be a good thing. So which podcast app or podcatcher do you use? Do you have any favorite? Do you have how you use it? There are other services like when you could use in a browser on your computer, like Listen Notes and also Podchaser, where it's more that use it on your computer in order to find new podcasts, to doing lists, to search for things, etc. And I like that aspect of it also. But I think most of the listeners are using it on their phone, and in the past it was the MP3 player, and now it's so simple. So now, like in Sweden, it's very consumption here on podcasts, being a small country, is on the top list. I got from Danny Brown, I think his name is, on Captivate.fm in the group there, that he did a screenshot of Statista or something like that, a service that you could pay for, subscription for the big players out there, and to use that for business intelligence, so on. There, the top there was now South Korea of consumption listening. And there you have, because probably everyone in Korea has one, or at least one mobile phone or smartphone. And then you had, I think, Spain coming up, and there is increase of the Spanish speaking podcasts. There is a growing market, and also some of the services that are being pushing out to be found in the search results. And then you have further down, you had Canada and America and so on. But Sweden is on number 3 there now, according to their list. I know according to Libsyn, their data, and they are one of the biggest podcast hosts out there, they say, I think last time I listened, Sweden was on number 5. So it was USA, Canada, Australia, and United Kingdom, and then Sweden. And if you compare the population of these countries with Sweden, you have a huge listening consumption in Sweden, because some of the popular podcasts are famous and known from radio, public radio, and others, and you have celebrities, and you have this ease of using and always connecting, and probably the Wi-Fi and the connection. So that's one reason. So it will be interesting as a new media advisor to inspire and guide individuals, personal brands, organizations, and companies to start a podcast, and coming on a guest of podcast and marketing themselves through podcasting. So that's, I think, for now. That is great news here that Pocket Cast got acquired by WordPress, and it will be interesting to follow along what will happen in the future with podcasting in general, and the consumption, and the whole podosphere, and the landscape there, and how things will play out. For example, like me, like an indie podcaster, how could I earn things on it? How could I get new contacts, listeners, guests on my podcast, market it for my services, and also how to spread the good word? Because I think, as I said, everyone has a book inside themselves, and also podcasts, and I'm good at inspire individuals to start their podcast with my guidance. So with that, I say cheerio, and talk to you soon again on Thursday, as I said, 9 a.m. Central European time. I will comment on an article in The Economist, probably what's going on in Cuba, and if you have any input there, you're more than welcome to say that. And also, I will do a special episode on the Thin Blue Line and talk about my support for the police force. And then on Saturday, it will be tea drinking party around 9 p.m. Central European time. Talk what good things in good lives, good things in life, and achieving your values and so on. So with that, I say, for the free viewers out there, thanks for watching. And I could end with this HAPS prompt saying download the HAPS app, and then get notified when I'm doing my new streaming, and then support my work on HAPS by giving my thumbs up, high five, and sharing the HAPS coins. That you get 100 free coins when you start for free, and then you could share it with other content creators. And it's interesting how this HAPS community and this platform, and we're streaming out different destination, however, it's developing over time. So again, cheers, and talk to you soon again. Bye for now.